I think that we might have our own little civil war about this one.
Oh, maybe.
I've talked to you a little bit about it.
A little bit.
And I get a sense of how you feel about it. Mm-hmm. I do sense that I think I liked it a lot more than you liked it.
No, I liked it, but I did have some issues with it. I'm going to say blindly like it.
I definitely have issues with it too, but there still might be different issues.
Right.
We'll get into it.
Civil War.
Civil War.
Let's see if we can avoid a civil war here.
Okay, yes.
Oh my God.
Move, move, move!
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do think that this is a divisive film, even as much as Alex Garland has come out and said he's tried to make it apolitical as possible. But just from what I've heard, like people talking about this film, they are like really coming down on one side or the other.
I think a large part of that is because of how polarized we are just as a nation. Everyone's trying to just, anytime something comes out, you just go to your sides. I'm probably guilty of that.
I think we all are a little bit.
Yeah, and of course, this is a movie about our country at war with one another. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and the movie kind of skirts that and doesn't necessarily give a stance in terms of...
It removes the why.
It removes the why. Okay, so basically what the movie's about is civil war is going on in our country, and the side that the third-term president is on...
The third-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
They're like very close to being done, like losing the war.
Yeah.
And these journalists are trying to get to D.C. in order to hopefully interview the president.
Taking a road trip from New York to D.C.
Yes.
Making some stops along the way so they can get that final interview with a president that's about to fall.
Yes.
That's the crux of it. It's a very fucked up road trip movie.
It's a very, yeah, exactly.
I give us about 20 minutes before our first ass raping. What do we do now?
It's like road trip mixed with apocalypse now. That's kind of the route that it took. But all that stuff's going on, but really at the heart of the film, it's kind of a jerk-off fest to journalism. You know what I mean?
Yes. The heroic photojournalist and war journalists, and
the movie's trying to these journalists, look how heroic they are and like how selfless they are and all that. And yes, that's what the job should be. 100%, absolutely. But they're trying to idealize this whole thing, and that's not the state of journalism that we are in nowadays.
No.
Let me guess. Berkeley?
Brown, actually.
This is like kind of a fantasy state of journalism.
Yes, and so that's the issue that I had with it. It's like, that's how it should be, but motherfuckers, this is not how it is in real life.
Right,
if this movie was being accurate, not even necessarily taking a side, it would still show that these journalists have like these fucking, motives, bias.
And they do, to be fair, they do a little bit with Kirsten Dunst's character. There's times where she has her little soapbox moments where she's talking about, I go out and I take these pictures hoping that it'll stop this from happening again, but it never does, like the typical anti-war. That's not like a left or right thing, but still, it's like she does have like a slight opinion about it.
Sure.
And the people should, but can she just go in and do her job, take the photos, move on, give them to the people who make the decisions?
Every time I survived the war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
Yeah.
So yes, it is fair in that regard, but it does treat it, like you said, like they're up on this pedestal, they can do no wrong type thing. That did bother me a little bit, but that probably bothered you more than me, because I was more focused on the why.
See,
and
that didn't bother me too much.
It bothered me because I know you don't necessarily need these reasons for the story to work. You can leave it up for interpretation, and that's fine. For the most part, I think that usually works. But for this, me personally, I'm not saying every viewer out there needed this, but I personally needed a little more explanation as to how this war started, why it's happening. Because for me, that's kind of the crux of whose side am I on then?
Well, I mean,
And-
but yeah, I mean, but the thing is, though, is we are following journalists who are supposed to be impartial.
That's correct.
And the
Yeah.
story, like the war, is a backdrop for the
Right,
story
yeah, I
of
understand
these
that's
journalists
not necessarily
and
what the story's
journalism
about.
in general.
Right.
So the trailer doesn't really sell you exactly what the movie's about. The movie's called Civil War, so you think it's warring country, and yeah, that serves more as the background. Really, the movie is about journalism.
Once you start asking yourself those questions, you can't stop. So we don't ask. We record so other people ask. You want to be a journalist? That's the job.
Hey, Lee,
What?
back off.
They touch on the why a little bit.
Yes.
And the way they touched on it, I liked how they revealed it, but at the same time, it annoyed me that it was so simplistic and just kind of an afterthought.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
He disbanded the FBI, something a sitting president just can't do. There's like ways to do that. A president can't just unilaterally just disband the FBI. And, he's in his third term now. And it's like, also,
Yeah.
like, what do you mean he's just in his third term? Like, how the hell would he just decided to stay and no one was like, get out?
Well, there definitely is a lot of things where it's like a leftoid's wet dream as to
and
like
that's what I took away
how,
from it.
how Trump really wants to be.
Okay. This is
So-
and this is where the why the lack of why bothers me. Not because I don't know, but because they give those little breadcrumbs like, oh, he did these few things. It's like I could just see like if you were to expand on those things further, the whole thing falls apart.
Sure.
Because you're gonna have to take a side now.
Yeah.
And they did their best to like try to avoid that, because if they did, it would be so obvious they'd be coming down on one side.
Yeah.
With Nick Offerman's character, who's he's barely in the movie as the president, it's like, don't even try to tell me this is apolitical. Like, he is obviously, whether it's loosely based off of Trump or whatever, but he's loosely based off of Trump. Just from little things he says, like in the beginning where he's like, this is going to be the greatest, it was the greatest victory in the history
Like
of
if it wasn't
all
Nick
world.
Offerman
Like,
doing it and he just read the script, there's no way you wouldn't be able to read those lines
Right.
without hearing Trump say it.
Right.
So, yeah.
and we'll go a little deeper with the Texas-California thing.
The so-called Western forces of Texas and California.
Right now, I don't know how you feel about this, because we had started to talk about it, but then we kind of stopped before we started
Well,
recording.
I think
but
the whole Texas-California thing, that just sounds so ridiculous on paper because they would never fucking align at all. But that to me is the movie trying to say like, okay, this is definitely an alternate version of America.
Right, well, it's how can we be apolitical? We take a blue state, we take a red state, and we put them together in service of democracy so they can take out a fascist president. I looked at it as you get the left and the right coming together to take the outsider out.
Yeah.
Who's an outsider in this world is Trump. He's the political outsider.
Sure.
So it was just more confirmation for me anyway that Offerman was that person.
Right. I guess
And maybe
why-
I'm reading into it too much, but
No, I don't think you are. I think that, like, because when you bring all this stuff up, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I can't really argue with that. But at the same time, movies, this sounds like I'm like such like pussyfooting around this right now, but movies they've always been left-wing, always.
Yeah.
And it was just back in the day before like all this social justice bullshit was infused. Filmmakers at least tried to somewhat pretend like it was neutral.
like the movie was made for everybody.
Yeah, and like that's kind of what this movie felt like, where it's like you
No,
watch
you're
it,
right, 100%
You
right,
watch
yeah.
it, and it's like, yeah, okay, this is like them, like this is like their worst nightmare about like Trump, and like they're just making a movie about that. But at the same time, if they really wanted to, they could have like full on made this guy more like Trump. They could have like made him.
Oh, of course.
They could have cast him that look like him,
it was a
that
very
talk like him.
restrained approach.
So I was, I guess, pleasantly surprised at how much they showed restraint.
Yeah.
Even though all the things that you're saying, I can't really argue with, but I still felt like they didn't go as hard as they could have.
No, definitely
especially
not.
just because of how polarized everything is right now.
Right. No, and I think that helped it a lot, because now you get these four characters following them from New York down to DC, and they all have their own, not political bent, but they all have their own kind of philosophy about how they approach the job. because you get the old guy, you get the young girl who's new, everything's
Right.
shiny, and she hasn't like
Well,
been broken
They're
yet.
journalists, so journalists are kind of inherently left wing, I guess.
Right.
So they got
But
that
you
bent
get them,
already.
You get
know?
them all like the different walks of life, kind of.
Well, no, it was a
And-
generational movie. It shows like the girl just starting her career,
Yes.
the two leads who are like
In the middle of the
middle-aged,
career,
yeah,
and then the guy
old
on his way
yeah.
out.
Which
Yeah.
I really liked that. I thought that
Yeah,
was
no,
cool.
that was good. All like every performance, especially in that group, I thought was fantastic.
Oh yeah, they're all solid,
The movie was put together really well.
expertly.
I don't know how you feel about Alex Garland, like his body of work, but I'm actually a pretty big Alex Garland fan.
I'm a fan. I still think that Ex Machina is his best movie, but like Annihilation,
Anything interesting in there? No.
that fucking movie. I haven't seen Men yet, but I hear it's like toxic masculinity.
Right,
Not
right.
really interested in that.
I mean, he goes back pretty far, like 20.
Sure, I'm just
20
talking about. I'm
days,
talking
like-
about the things he's directed.
Right. Okay. Right. Like
But
you know, because
28
he
days later,
wrote like Sunshine. and, like,
I love Sunshine.
Big Sunshine fan.
Except for the third act.
Oh,
but
yeah, of course. But even as a director, like
Yeah.
I liked Devs.
I haven't seen that yet, but you've recommended that.
Devs was pretty good. Nick Offerman's one of the leads in that. The quality of filmmaking is really solid, and it's done like that photojournalist documentary style.
Yes.
You know, where you're just like you're in the action. It feels real.
Yeah, the last 30 minutes where they raided
That's
the
it.
White House.
Everything's punchy. Like the sound
Yeah.
design was really,
masterful.
really good.
Really good Atmos effects with the overhead channels.
Yeah, but that last 30 minutes where it's the siege on DC was really incredible.
It was.
Like that's worth seeing in the theater alone, just for that last 30 minutes. As they were fighting, they kept snapping shots, and then it would the sound would kind of go away, and it would cut to the shot, and then you see like, oh yeah, this looks like an iconic war shot, but then it pulls back, and you get to see how it was captured.
And some of the shots they would show were probably some of the throwaway shots. Like they weren't even the perfect ones. But it was very much like on the ground war photography.
That was very cool.
They did a lot of cool things, and I don't know if you noticed this, and I don't know if this was actually an optical effect, like this is from the lens itself, or if they added this later on in post, but they would do this thing with Kirsten Dunst's character where there was like this chromatic aberration filter that would like just engulf her.
Yeah.
And then it would like go away. It was very cool how they did it. Then it would kind of go away. It was like how she zeroed in on things, how she focused in on things.
Right.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but at the end, spoiler, when she gets killed at the end, she gets killed in front of the young journalist. That effect then happens to the young journalist.
Yes.
So it's like it passes on to her. And it's just a little
that's
subtle visual thing, but they do a lot of cool things like that in the movie. Very, very well done technically.
But then you get shit like the Jesse Plemons scene.
Oh God.
Okay.
Which was a very tense, great scene. Like I think Jesse Plemons is a fantastic actor.
On
and
face value, just looking at it from a film and just a scene itself, a sequence in the film.
Yes.
Objectively good.
Yes.
But you know damn well that Jesse Plemons is a leftoid's idea
You know
of
he's
a
not
MAGA.
he's not a Biden voter.
Yeah, he's a fucking MAGA Republican. Just like, what kind of American are you?
Kind of American art. So you're from Missouri? You're from Colorado? Okay, where are you from? Hong Kong? Just shoots the dude immediately.
Before this scene happens, they introduce these, like literally right before this scene, the scene before that, they introduce these two new Asian characters.
Yeah.
And as you said, they just introduced them so they're fodder for the next
as
scene.
soon as they showed up,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, here comes some fodder for whatever's next, whatever obstacle they run into next. Because this movie was ultimately just a road trip of obstacles. You go from one dangerous situation to the next dangerous situation, where they slowly escalated until ultimately they hit the mini boss. They hit Jesse Plemons, and
his red MAGA hat just morphed into red sunglasses.
into his rose-colored sunglasses.
Yeah,
So he
rose-colored.
can see the country how he wants to see it.
Exactly.
Xenophobe, like Asian-free, or like just immigrant-free, whatever the fuck he was.
Yeah, then there's like
But it just felt like
he's dumping bodies into that mass grave next to him.
they're all black and women, and like
yeah.
just no white dudes in that grave.
Yeah.
But it was like every time they showed up at another location and it was like another obstacle, you really had to pay attention to who was fighting who and who they as journalists decided to hide behind. you have to take a side in a situation like that. Not necessarily that you believe in what they're doing, but who's the side that's not going to kill me?
Yeah, obviously one side was less hostile towards the press
right,
than
and the
other.
Offerman side was, like, they shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol. There's that scene where they join up with that group where they're attacking a building, and it looks like there's some like Marines up in the building. They're wearing, fatigues.
Yes.
A bunch of white guys up there.
Of course.
And they join up with the group of
comprised of Asian guys
and black guys.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to hide with them. They take over that building, and they're just like killing these prisoners. That's another thing. Like they don't take prisoners in this movie. It's just like they just immediately kill everybody.
Well, I mean, again, we're just watching through the eyes of the journalists.
Yes. But in that scene, when they bring those Marine prisoners down, they line them up and then they're shooting them all. You look at what all the journalists are doing. Like the young girl, she's actually photographing the scene. What you'd expect that all of them to be doing. The main guy, he's just talking to one of the other soldiers, just like laughing his ass off. Kirsten Dunst is just like up high, just like looking down, like watching the scene, like, that's right, they're getting what they deserve. That's how I looked at it. Maybe I'm like reading into that too much, but that scene felt like, okay.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you're probably right, but I guess when I was watching it, I just felt like that's just kind of how, like, when you have journalists go with our military over somewhere, they're probably going to be bullshitting with the soldiers and like talking to them and laughing with them and doing all that stuff.
But
like
there was just
he's kind of getting in good with the soldiers. Perhaps it helps him aid another thing he's working on, another story he's working on.
That's totally fair.
And like this could be me reading into that too much as well.
That's totally fair. I just noticed that all the white dudes were on one side of the conflict.
Yes, I mean you are right, but I took that scene more as like it's just the madness of war. You know what I mean? Just how even these journalists are reacting to it.
That's fair, and I admit, like, I could be totally reading into it. And
you're probably not.
Well, I think especially once we put this video out, like, I'm really interested to see what the comments are going to be like, because I don't think there's going to be that many middle of the road people on this film.
Comment section is going to be great. Can't wait to see.
I can't wait for the constructive comments coming in.
I know more than you.
I feel like going into the film, whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out.
Sure.
So if you go in like, oh God, they're just hating on Trump in this movie, and then you're going to, in every scene, you're just going to see the anti-Trump rhetoric. But if you go in feeling like, oh, well, no, maybe it's apolitical, then you'll probably walk away thinking it's apolitical, and that's okay. I think that's going to be open to the viewer.
I don't know. Maybe I'm like the only one, but like I just feel like I went in feeling that first thing, like, oh my God, they're going to just be shitting on all this stuff, and I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they
did it in a competent way.
They did, yeah, and I guess I appreciate that.
They did it in a way they used to do it in movies, where they'd utilize subtext.
Yes, exactly. That's all I require.
It's not like they go.
You can have your dumb fucking points of views about things. I don't care. That's fine. Free country. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Right.
But if you're beating something over my head, that's when I have a problem.
Yeah.
When you talk about things as if it were fact and not just your own political opinion or whatever, that's where I have a problem with things. When you can actually capture nuance, and I'm not saying that this movie successfully did that, and that's not what I'm saying at all. As a filmmaker, as a journalist, that's what your approach should always be, is try to capture the nuance of a situation and not just like pick a side. Yeah, but there were other things too. Like the journalist said, oh yeah, when you did that reporting on the Antifa massacre, and just the way that was phrased, it's like that can go either way.
It could. And as soon as she mentioned it, I remember watching it like, oh, fuck you. And then I stopped for a second. I was like, oh, well, they didn't really say which way they went.
Well, that's what I mean. That's good. That's cool.
That's proper. That's the proper way to do it.
Yes.
You let the audience decide.
Yeah, what does that mean?
What does that mean? Is it Antifa mowing down people, or is it
people
Antifa getting mowed down?
Yes, exactly, and that's a bad thing. Like I said earlier, the movie did feel a lot like Apocalypse Now. That's what it was reminding me of. And I love the generational aspect of the three different, you
get to
walks
see
of life journalists. I thought that was
good.
really cool.
That was really well done.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a coming of age story for the younger girl becoming a journalist.
Yeah, her going through all the shit and then witnessing it firsthand, and then you see her transformation.
Yeah.
By the end, she basically becomes
Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst.
And I did like that. I liked that a lot. I think that they did that really well. And
Yeah.
so that's I guess what resonated with me the most as I watched it. It was funny, like a couple weeks ago, me and my wife, we watched Almost Famous. And tonally, these movies cannot be
Great
any
movie.
different.
Great movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Like, it really is. I hadn't seen it in years, but it is a fantastic movie. But the movie's kind of similar. It's about like this young kid trying to be a journalist and like going on this road trip with his subjects.
Yeah.
And like the adventures that he goes on along the way. Now again, tonally completely different fucking movies. But that's what I loved about Almost Famous. It's like you just see this kid who's like really good at what he
it's
does.
through his eyes.
Eager.
And, yeah.
Yeah, and so this movie did that as well. And I liked it for the same reasons as Almost Famous. even though they're
That
different
aspect of the
movies.
film is great. As you had mentioned earlier, like the trailer kind of doesn't give you a sense of, like, this is just a movie that you follow through the eyes of the journalists.
Yeah.
Versus like getting to know a little more about the Civil War.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's just personal. Like, I just wish I got to know a little more.
You know what? Actually,
But it's not necessary.
Now that you say that, though, okay. So the movie War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise. Okay, love it or hate it, like that movie bothers me because it's called War of the Worlds, and like they're just using that war as the backdrop, where it's really about this father and his kids and how they're dealing with the scenario. Fuck that. I want to see like the military fighting the aliens. Like I wanted to see Steven Spielberg do that. Like I wanted to see Steven Spielberg's Independence Day. You know what I mean?
Right.
But instead
yeah.
we got like him doing another version of Signs, basically.
Right, which is, you know, like I kind of wanted a little more of
That's
that.
what I'm saying. So the movie is called Civil War, so you expect to see the Civil War and
Right.
like all the
or just at least learn a little more
military
about it.
stuff
I'm not saying
behind
like
it.
I needed the entire movie to
Sure.
be that. Like you can still follow the journalist. I just wanted a little more info. Just
Right.
so I can get a better idea of who these forces were that were fighting, and not even necessarily the why. Like if you want to withhold the why, fine. I just needed a little more geographical sense.
Right.
Like, but it wasn't even until after I watched the movie that I realized that there were, I think, 5 different factions.
Yeah, it's like we still don't even know the full extent of
Right.
who's fighting who and
Right,
all
and
that.
I don't think that's like betraying the intent of the filmmaker by keeping it vague, by giving us a little more information.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, once I sat down to watch the movie and I kind of got what the movie was about, at that point, that stuff didn't bother me as much. But I totally understand why it's frustrating. Because, again, that's why I brought up the War of the Worlds thing. Because
Sure, yeah.
that frustrated me for the same reason.
It's called Civil War. I want to see a
Yes.
little more of a Civil War.
Yes, exactly.
So, okay, so you liked it quite a bit.
I did. I'm kind of teetering on my rating, but
The sign of a good film is, does it make you think about it after you've seen it?
yeah.
A movie like Ex Machina, I was thinking about that movie
I still think about
for
it.
days, and
Yeah.
it was pissing me off so much because I hated the end of that film. But I hated it. It got such a reaction out of me.
Yeah,
I was
you
like,
hate it 'cause
oh,
it's
because it's
good.
good.
Yeah.
This, I walked out. I thought about it a little, and now it's a few days later, and I really haven't thought about it since. So
Yeah.
I prefer Ex Machina to
Oh,
this
yeah,
in terms of,
100%.
but that's, whatever.
In terms of his directorial efforts, that Ex Machina is still his best.
Yeah, but
by
this still
far.
is like an achievement in terms of just its scope and
Yeah.
visual style and sound design, everything. So ranking wise, I gave it a 6.5 out of 10.
That's funny because like that's what I'm giving it too. I was debating a 6.5 or a 7, but no, I really did land on 6.5, and funny enough, it's because you just said like the mark of a good film is you think about it days afterwards or whatever, or the day after. In the moment, I really did like it, but I was thinking about the kind of the things that you were saying, and then I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna get a 6.5 or a 7.
Yeah.
But then I just didn't really think about it the next day.
The film is there to act as a warning. It's like a near future America of like, oh, this is what we're in store for if we keep going down this path of just infighting with each other.
I saw the movie as more like, oh, you can't like, next time you think about criticizing journalists, you think about this
okay,
movie.
well, there's that too.
That's where I
Fuck that.
and that was the most annoying thing about me.
The
'cause-
infallible journalist.
Because again, it's
Yeah,
like,
okay.
you guys have a lot of fucking nerve, like sucking at all these journalists' dicks right now, when you guys have been doing nothing but damage to the country for the past 15 years.
Right. So you got the two main characters.
Yeah.
They work for Reuters. And then you get the black dude who was a New York Times journalist. It's like, where's the Fox journalist who's along for the ride? If we're going to go apolitical with this.
No, honestly, what they should have done is made them independent journalists.
Yes.
You know, not working for some fucking major publication.
Not working for the New York Times.
That would have, like, I don't know, maybe someone on the left would disagree with what I'm about to say, but to me that would make it more neutral if, like, they weren't owned by, if they weren't journalists for some major corporation.
Right, yeah.
You know, but again, though, I guess independent journalism is seen as more of a right-wing thing. I don't fucking know.
Right, because only legitimate journalists work for the mainstream.
Yeah, but if you're making an alternate, like what Alex Garland says, you're making an alternate America. Their version of an independent journalist would be them, you know?
Right, or don't even mention it.
Exactly.
Like, you're not going to get into the reasons why the Civil War is going on, who's on what side, people's political bent. Then why do I need to know which publication they work for? Because obviously publications have political bents.
Yeah, and Reuters and New York Times definitely do.
Right. On our other scale, I would feel disingenuous calling anything in this movie woke, because Garland is a fantastic writer, and I think he understands subtext.
I'd like to think he does. The crew that we're following, it's like a Hispanic guy, 2 women, and an old black guy. So it's kind of like, okay.
Right.
Virtually all of the villains that they run into are white dudes. But at the very end, when they get into the White House,
crosses,
when they get into the White House, like the president's either his press secretary or his chief of staff, whoever that person was.
The black chick.
It was a black woman.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay, well, there you go.
Right, that's their attempt to be
their attempt to we'll see, we're you know, we're being fair and balanced.
Right. So I'm saying they could have avoided all of this if they just made Nick Offerman's character a black woman.
Seriously?
If the president was a black woman, then there's nothing you could say about this movie.
They could have set this film in the same universe as Deep Impact and had Morgan Freeman still be the president.
Yeah, Morgan Freeman. That would have been fantastic if he was just president.
He kept going, like, terms, like he just, after they destroyed the comets, like he just kept being president.
Right.
So,
right, like FDR style.
Yeah, exactly. He became this, like, huge dictator and, like, fascist.
Disbanded the FBI.
Yeah, that would have been fucking ballsy, though, if they, not the Deep Impact thing, but if they made the president just like a black dude or whatever.
Right.
That would have been ballsy. Then it's like, oh, you know, this isn't necessarily the real world, but they mentioned Antifa. And
what is it then?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you didn't change things enough for this to not be, like, America, like, 6 months from now, or a year from now, whatever, post 2024 election.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say 1.5.
Yeah.
It's mostly just, I'd say, casting choices in terms of characters.
Agree. It's like
they were just a little too on the nose with, like, who were the bad guys, who were the good guys in certain scenarios.
Sure, and there was, like, really no gender politics in it, nothing like that.
No, not really. It's still worth checking out.
I think it's totally worth checking out. It didn't really stay with me like Ex Machina did. Even if you hate this movie, there's no denying that the man is fucking talented.
Oh, definitely.
And he should keep making movies. But yeah, it was solid. Go check it out.
Check it out.